approve the minutes from last meeting.
Mr. Walter, approve the meeting.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Highway Department.
All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I've already supplied you with the two handouts. The first one on top of the list will be our speed limit request. We had 4 different roads come to the Highway Department, and attached with our request is the letter from the Sheriff's Department from Lieutenant Joe Gray with his recommendations. So just briefly on the front, Neal Avenue, they're requesting it to be 25 miles per hour, and what that does is coincides with, in the city limits of Smyrna, Neal drops down to 25. We had it at 30, so we're wanting to drop that back to 25, so it'll be the same all the way across from county to city limits there. Cheatham Springs Road is 30 miles per hour recommended, and Old Jackson Ridge Road was recommended at 30, and then South Winrow Road was recommended at 40 miles per hour. And like I had said, Lieutenant Joe Gray also kind of give us some little words of suggestions, and this was his recommendation on the speed limits there. So this did go to our board yesterday morning, and they approved this and was to send it on to Public Works tonight. Do you have any questions?
I'll move that we approve the speed limit request as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, the next and last item that I'm bringing for you tonight is we're doing a budget amendment, and this budget amendment is yesterday morning, again at the board meeting, we opened a state aid road project, which will be Burnt Knob Road from Amelville Road down to just west of Veterans Parkway, not quite 3.5 miles long. We will be doing milling and resurfacing for this entire project. We took the bids in. This year, the state aid project roads are split with the state at a 98-2 split. So the state will cover 98% of the cost, and we only have to cover 2%, whereas in times past, it's been an 80-20 split. So we're able to get this job under this by having it bid and starting before July 1st. So this budget amendment is to show in the revenue the additional $524,000 that we will be taking into our revenue account line item for the state aid road. We are also doing an increase of $545,000 in our state aid projects expenditure, so that we are able to, what is in that line item with this additional $545,000, to pay for the job once it is completed, and then the revenue will show what we'll get back from the state. To offset that just a little bit, got with Mr. Tucker in finance, we, at this point in time, instead of taking any money out of fund balance to offset our project cost, our 2%, we're going to pull $21,000 out of our diesel fuel line item, which we are very comfortable with what is left in there right now. We're almost at 80% of our budget year completed, and we've only spent like 39% of our diesel fuel, because luckily the numbers are down on our cost per gallons on that. So before you have the budget amendment to cover this state aid job that we've got coming in, which will greatly improve this road, the road situation out there, and we'll be able to do it all basically covered at 98% with the state funding. And we only got we'll come up with 2%, which is roughly about $17,000 or $18,000 truly that it will cost the county to have this job done. Our 2%.
Both of these are Burnt Knob?
Yes, what it has to show is we have the revenue, and then we had the increase of what the revenue is, the top line item, the $46,420 state aid road. That's our revenue line item for that. The next two line items on the budget amendment, The $68,726 is state aid road project. That is the actual count that I will write the check to our vendor that was awarded the contract. I will write that check out of that. The next line item, the $63,100 412 diesel fuel, is where we were having to take our little extra to make everything balance out of that to make that. So the last two on the budget amendment, those last two line items are expenditures to completely cover the cost of the job.
So this $1,069,000, $1,069,000.
Just to be honest, I asked Mr. Tucker this. I don't know why they total those line items, and it shouldn't be because the revenue comes in as an increase of money we're going to be getting back in. But then you also have to show the increase to the expenditure account because we've got to write that money out. So I'm not sure why they total up at the bottom because this is a form that I did work with Mr. Tucker and get. So not quite sure on that, but the total complete job is going to be roughly $820,000 for the complete job. And so what we've done is making sure we had enough and then,
The 824.
right, yes, sir. Is there any more questions?
I'll make the motion to approve her budget amendment request.
Second.
Motion made and second. Call the roll.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Nipper?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Serena?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Jernigan?
Yes.
All right, we thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thanks, Al.
We appreciate your time tonight.
Building codes.
Good evening.
Good evening.
How is everybody?
Good.
As I mentioned last month, our reports are now available online, so I didn't bring any paper copies with me, but they are posted on our website, so you can view those at any time there too. This month, we had a total of 301 permits issued. 80 of those were single-family dwellings, which is, it's actually down a couple from last month, but just a couple. Our revenue is up at 111, excuse me, it's down from last month. It's 111,615. Last month was 125,286. And just while I was waiting, between 4:30 and when I had to come over here, I ran some numbers just to give you an idea of how we were kind of doing this fiscal year and calendar year. So far this fiscal year, compared to last year at this point, this last fiscal year, we had 555,252. Right now, this fiscal year, we have, our revenue is at 886,934. So we're well up. This calendar year, last year, we were at 245,635. And this calendar year, at this point, the same time last year, we are at 426,442. Development tax, we collected 234,000 even. That brings us to just shy of 5 million for the fiscal year to date.
Question. Any motion?
Were you gonna do your zoning enforcement report too?
Yeah, I just didn't know if anybody had any money or any questions on the money end of it. And if you don't, I'll go on with the zoning report. Our zoning inspections were also down a little bit this month. We had a total of 164 with 20 new cases. $713 so far this year.
Well, I'll move that we approve the report.
Second.
Motion made and seconded.
Is that your file copy?
It is. Do you want a copy?
Call roll.
You can just do acclamation.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Commissioners, good evening. First item on our report today is our available lot inventory. I know you've gotten used to seeing over the last several years. Our total available lots as of April of 2017, if you look on the, get to the back of that second page, you'll see that we're up to 685, which is 120 more than what we had this time last year. Actually, I apologize, I forgot to change that to the 4, excuse me. But you can see, and we've talked about this in the last several months, that the number that we have seen has been trending upwards just because we've been seeing a lot of subdivisions being recorded. No real major subdivisions being recorded last month, mostly just 1 or 2 lot subdivisions recorded last month. So the number actually did go down just a little bit from what you saw last month. I think it was 700 something last month, if I remember right. But I expect that to continue. We do have a lot of projects in the pipeline right now, a lot of construction projects going on as far as construction of subdivisions. Nothing been recorded yet, so I'm not surprised that this number is still kind of trending up. But you know, as new subdivisions come online, there was one subdivision that was recorded last month that, or I guess I think it was in March, that I noticed this month had about a dozen permits pulled on it just within very short succession. So I expect to see more of that kind of activity going on as these new subdivisions come online. So, and then the subdivision not recorded inventory, that last page that you've got there, you'll see that you know, we're still about 3,000 lots that are somewhere in the pipeline approved but not yet recorded. So again, they're out there. So it's just a matter of time before we start seeing those recorded. If there's no questions on that, I'll go ahead and move over to the rezoning report. We'll have 4 cases for your consideration this month. The first of those is along Highway 99, 7800. Highway 99, this is Penny and Mike Matthews, excuse me. The applicant would like to construct a family medical practice on the property. They're looking to zone the property to office professional from residential medium density. The applicant will be the provider and will have a staff of 3 other persons. She states she will focus on health prevention and education. They did provide a concept plan, which has been included with your agenda packets. When this was originally considered by the Planning Commission, it actually went in March. The Planning Commission deferred the application mainly because the concept plan that was provided at the time was really more of a sketch. It wasn't really to scale. I think the Planning Commission had some issues with the size, what looked like the size of the buildings on there. What they're proposing is going to be a relatively small building, so like somewhere between 2,000 to 2,500 square feet roughly is what they're looking at. The buildings and the way they had it drawn on the original concept plan made it look like it was like a 20,000 or 30,000 square foot building. So the issue was, we know that there's some water backup in this area. If you notice on the concept plan, there is a conservation easement along a little blue line area right through there. Now, after looking at this and meeting with the applicant, and our engineer looked at it too, Mr. Mike Hughes, we felt confident and comfortable that they'd be able to make it work. Of course, they'll have to go through site plan review if this is approved through the Planning Commission, which will have to show detention on site for storm water, you know, where it's going to go, make sure it's not affecting off-site properties, those kind of things. You do notice in there that I did include some correspondence that was received from one of the neighbors in the area, actually the neighboring property. He sent some information. This was presented to the Planning Commission, and I've included it in your packets as well for your review. Ultimately, after discussion, the Planning Commission was comfortable with the request, and they did recommend approval by a unanimous vote. The second item is a property that you've actually seen not too terribly long ago. This is the Watercrest Planned Development request. There is a copy of the pattern book that is on your iPads if you want to refresh your memory on that. This was originally approved by the board back in January of this year. Within a few weeks after this approval was granted, the applicant called up to me and asked about the possibility of changing the development around a little bit. As you recall, there's a single-family element on the west side of Almaville Road with a small commercial element, and then on the eastern side, it's mostly commercial element on that side, and then a multifamily element as well. They were looking at the possibility of replacing the single-family element with a townhome element. Essentially, what I told them was that would be a major deviation from what they had originally proposed and would have to come back through this process for an amendment. So they have went ahead and they have done that. The information, again, that's on your iPads, they were showing originally 82 single-family units, which is being reduced down to 68 townhome units. The units would be a minimum of 1,200 square feet and 2 bedrooms. This was less than what was the single-family element was going to be, which was 1,600 minimum. They also would have one-car garages, and frontages would be 50% masonry material. There was a neighborhood meeting on this, which is required by our zoning ordinance for any kind of a plan development or amendment to a plan development. It was really just myself and the applicant and their applicant's engineer. Nobody else came to the meeting, although they did send out notices and everything. From an overall impact standpoint, I didn't really see any major change as far as any impact in the area. It's actually less units than what they had proposed originally. There was a significant amount of discussion regarding the ownership of the units, if they were going to be owner versus renter occupied. Ultimately, the applicant stated that it was his intent to have them more owner occupied, didn't want to see them become rental units. There was some concern about the Clinton Commission on that as well, but the decision ultimately was to kind of leave it the way that the applicant had presented, not to put any specific condition in there, just because it'd be difficult for something like that for us to track that. The brick masonry requirement did go down a little bit, so they just asked for that to be bumped back up to closer to what it was, about 70%. The applicant was fine with that, and that did pass by a unanimous vote as well. The third item is really what I would call more of a kind of a cleanup item, if you will. This is really just right down the road, actually, from the last one we just looked at on Ocala Road. The zoning, the PUD zoning for the South Haven subdivision was originally approved by the board back in 2015. An amendment to the original design was approved back in August of 2015. The same developers that are developing South Haven are also looking at an adjacent tract, which they have submitted a preliminary plan for, called the Preserve. This is not a planned development, it's just going to be developed as a RM, typical 15,000 square foot subdivision. Essentially what they're doing is they're proposing to swap out about 1.7 acres between the South Haven development and the property that's in the development for the Preserve. The zoning lines for the properties when these were rezoned, when South Haven was rezoned, these zoning lines are established using the existing property lines. So just because you subdivide the property and change some land around, that doesn't automatically change the zoning with it. So essentially what they're doing is they're taking 1.7 acres from the Preserve, and it's all for open space, really is what it is. They're taking 1.7 acres from the Preserve and converting it over to South Haven, and they're taking 1.7 acres of the South Haven development and converting it over to the Preserve development, kind of square things up a little bit. So basically there's no change in the development, there's no change in what they're trying to propose as far as the South Haven development is concerned. Is just swapping 1.7 acres between them and making the zonings match. That's really all they're doing. There was very little discussion really on this. It took longer to explain it than it did for really the commission to act on it. The Planning Commission did recommend approval of this again by a unanimous vote. The last item is just across 840 from this property that we just talked about. This is property that is located along Shores Road, 6640 Shores Road. The property's been the subject of a number of zoning requests over the years. I won't go into all the back history of it. I'll wait till the full county commission meeting, unless you just want me to go into it. I'd be more than happy to. When we did our zoning ordinance update, we originally recommended the property, it's currently zoned commercial neighborhood. We originally recommended to go back to residential RM just because nothing had ever been done on this property. It had been zoned for commercial purposes with a conditional use permit, but nothing was ever formally established on that, and that conditional use permit had been voided. During the Planning Commission's meetings, when we were looking at the new zoning ordinance, ultimately, they recommended commercial neighborhood for the property. The property owner came in and wanted to keep his commercial designation, so they ended up giving him commercial neighborhood, which was the most restrictive of the 3 commercial zones that we have. A couple months ago, they came in looking for light industrial zoning for this property. This never did make it to the county commission. It was recommended for denial at the planning commission back in February, and then after that, the applicant just withdrew the application. We were more comfortable with a commercial designation, either commercial services, which is kind of our middle of the road commercial zoning, or commercial general, which is our least restrictive of the commercial zones. The applicant that's looking to buy the property wants to do a directional drilling type business, and commercial general would fit that need. So instead of the industrial zoning, he came back and is asking for commercial general zoning for this property. We have a higher comfort level with that particular request. The Planning Commission did have some discussion about this, about the appropriateness of the zoning, whether it was the best use for the area. After some discussion, it wasn't a unanimous vote, but they did vote to recommend approval of the request by a vote of 7-4 and 2 against. So with that, those are the 4 cases you'll have come before you, so I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions?
I'll move that we approve the report.
Second.
Motion made and second. Call roll.
You can do acclamation.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Doug.
Good evening, how are y'all?
Pleased. How you doing there?
I'm doing good. Garbage business is always picking up, so we've been doing a lot of that. It's always fun, though. To start out with, let me tell you that we, 2 weeks ago, went on a tour to Huntsville. The part of the SWAC committee went. The group that put on the tour did an excellent job. The facility itself, the guy that ran it, there was no question that could not be asked. He would answer it. And then the Solid Waste Authority presented how things like that would work, the do's and the don'ts, and then they even had a section there at the end if they had to do it over, what they would do differently. And the reason I asked him to do that was in case they had mistakes, we wanted to learn from theirs and not have to learn from our own. But I think that went really well.
What did their facility, was it?
The facility is a waste energy facility. It's called Mass Burn. Sometimes things just work out really well. And when this one was built back in the late 80s, early 90s, it's literally right next to Redstone Arsenal, and it produces steam for the arsenal. The Army wanted something, the city needed to do something, so it kind of worked out that it was in the best interest of everyone. So they burn about half of the trash. The other half actually goes to the landfill, so the facility is not really large enough to do the whole thing. But everybody made note of how clean it was and almost odorless, which was a little bit surprising. When you're dealing with garbage, you would think you'd have an odor, but all the garbage was dumped inside the building. Standing outside, you couldn't smell anything. The only odor that you could smell during the tour, when you were next to the boilers, you could smell the heat and something hot, and it wasn't a stench, but it wasn't a pleasant odor. So it was really good. Redstone Arsenal, when they had the tornado, 2 years ago, something like that, was without power for several days, so they asked them to put in another way to generate electricity. Not a lot of electricity, wouldn't power the whole facility, just enough to keep them up and running because they didn't have any. So it worked out really well for them just because of the way they had a user for their product and got a way to get rid of their trash at the same time. So it was a really good tour. And May the 13th, which is the Saturday before Mother's Day, is the household hazardous waste collection. It's going to be at the City of Murfreesboro's Mulch facility on Florence Road. from 8 until noon. Small quantity generators, which is small businesses that generate a little bit of hazardous waste, they can call and set up an appointment through TDEC and the contractor to get rid of that stuff. But what we're doing is for residents only. No paint, don't bring any paints with you, don't bring any electronics. And then, of course, the landfill is the landfill. It's busy again, it's springtime. As a reminder, the landfill is open on the first and third Saturday of each month from 8 until 11:45, from the 1st of April to the end of October. But we will be closed on holiday weekends. You know, so if that happens to fall on a holiday, then we won't be open that Saturday. But it's staying rather busy. We've got a lot of things still going on out there. So we're trying to keep up with that. And then on the recycling center side, we're extremely busy, a little short-handed. So we've got all hands on deck doing the best we can, trying to keep up with it. And so far, we've been able to. But looking for a garbage truck driver. So if you know of one, send them our way. A good one that shows up for work and does what they're supposed to do.
That's a special one.
Sometimes.
Not just good, that's special.
Well, I have several of those. I just need some more of them. But the centers are actually getting busy. Population growth and then changing of the seasons. Ours is actually seasonal. So I think it was 2 weeks ago, it rained all weekend. Was the slowest Monday start we'd had in forever. This past Monday when we started was 120 loads. Before we'd changed our policy for Sunday bulk items, we'd been around 170 loads. So that has helped, reduce some of that and keep it where it's manageable for us. But it's staying really, really busy. Any questions?
Anybody got any questions? Any motion then?
I'll move to approve his report as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now we need to go back and redo. We like doing things multiple times, so. The litter grant we ran through, I think it was last month. And when we had the litter grant meeting and the training, which is required for somebody to go, I went and they handed out a piece of paper, said that ours was actually going to go up to 96,000. When they sent the actual paperwork, it has gone up to 113,002. So we've already gone through the process to do it at 96,000, but we need to do that process all over again because it's going to be more money. Any questions?
So is this an application or is this an acceptance of?
This is we've still got to turn in the application and the resolution and all that kind of stuff for them to actually award it to us. So this is not actually an award. This is just telling us
This is
what
how
we.
much we're going to get.
Yeah, this is
So
telling
you need
us.
approval to reapply and upon granting of the grant, accept it.
Right.
That's really what we need to do.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll make that motion.
Second.
And this is your grant, and this is your proposed resolution?
Yes, ma'am. That's basically the example resolution they sent us. So figure if it looked like what they like, then they'll accept it easier.
We can do this either way. Acclamation or roll call.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And that's all I have, unless y'all have some questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, anybody got anything else? Not a move adjourned.
That's right, you messed up with it.